people who have information like this do get it out and out into the public as soon as possible for their own protection, at any rate.
I had a former federal person tell me that anyone can commit a murder. It takes an expert to commit a suicide. So I took that to heart. And that was one of the reasons I make sure that everything I can that I receive, I put out there. And amazingly, the media, the mainstream media, has asked for this material, but they won't touch this story. And I've been essentially told by them that this story is so ugly, we want to be second. We're not going to walk out on that plank first. We're going to let somebody else break it, and then we'll jump on it. But it's not coming from us first. And the only people who actually do the story and run it in the mainstream was the BBC. And of course, that story never made it to the United States. It aired and was in Europe, but not here.
Tell us a little bit about that and how it came about.
It came about because of the documents, and I received a call from a BBC producer who said, "Can I have the documents?" And I said, "Certainly." And then they, a week or two later, said, "Can we come over and talk to you?" And I said, "Of course." They came over, spent a couple of days with me, and then they went to Oklahoma City and filmed for 30 days. Went to Oklahoma and filmed a documentary on the bombing and the federal government's involvement. And it aired in Europe, but not here.
And what information did they include in that documentary?
All of the stuff about Strassmeyer and the documents I had found, the documents that talked in terms of the prior knowledge the government had about the plan to blow up the Murrah building, the fact that they had so many informants involved with McVeigh. It's been years since I've looked at it, but basically it was to lay out this was a sting operation that went south. And once that happened, the federal government pulled out all the stops in order to try to cover this thing up. And it's that old adage, first comes the screw up, then comes the cover up. I mean, that's what happened here, assuming it was a screw up.
Well, that is the question. And yet, of course, absolutely no American mainstream media wants to touch this story with a 10-foot pole, and I think that'll come as no surprise to my listeners. All right, well, so going back to the issue of foreknowledge, we have Carol Howe, the FBI informant who cased out the Alfred P. Murrah building with the Elohim City gang in October of '94. And I understand that Terry Nichols also told you about a phone call that was apparently placed a day or 2 days before the bombing, warning the FBI that there was a bombing going to take place.
Yes, and I found an FBI document that confirmed what I'm about to tell your listeners happened. Nichols is in Oklahoma awaiting trial for murder on the state charges. He'd already been convicted but not given the death penalty by a federal jury. He's approached by a person who claims to be an off-the-books operative of the Department of Justice, and is taken in to see Nichols, and it says, "My name will not appear on any records or anything, so it'll be complete deniability on the part of the federal government. But we can assure you will not receive the death penalty if you will agree to three things." And Nichols says, "Well, how can you promise me that I won't receive the death penalty here in Oklahoma?" And this operative said, "We will not provide witnesses or evidence to the state prosecutors so that they won't be able to convict you." And and Nichols says, "Then what are the three things they have to do?" And the first thing they said is, "You have to take responsibility." Well, first of all, they said, Nichols says, "What are the three things I have to do?" And the first thing they say is, "You have to implicate your brother in the bombing." And Nichols says, "I won't do that. My brother wasn't involved." And they said, "The second thing," he said, "What's the second thing?" And they said, "You have to take responsibility or credit for a phone call that was made to us, the FBI, April 18th, 1995, warning about the bombing." And Nichols said, I didn't make that call. And they said, it doesn't matter. You just say you did. And what that told me was somewhere there is a record of that phone call having been made that the FBI cannot get rid of. And so they need someone who will take credit for it in the event it eventually is discovered, that record. And Nichols, and that was no problem for Nichols. I mean, he would take credit for that, I'm assuming. He never told me he would, but to save his life, that's just common sense. And Nichols said, what's the third thing? And they said, we want to know where the detonators that you took from the home of Roger Moore in Arkansas are buried. And Nichols thought they wanted those detonators to implicate Moore in the bombing. And Nichols says, I will give you Roger Moore. And supposedly the person says to Nichols, no deal. Moore's untouchable. So that told me what they wanted then were those detonators, because they would have the fingerprints of the other people involved in the bombing, one or more of whom would have been the fingerprints of an informant. And eventually the FBI finds those detonators and destroys them. And the purpose of that was, as I said, the purpose in my mind, the purpose of looking for those detonators, again, on the part of the FBI, I think, was to get them, to destroy them before the fingerprints could be taken off of them, so that there'd be no way that anyone in the future would link any of their informants to the bombing.
I don't quite get that part of it, because I don't understand, if these were unused detonators, then whose fingerprints would have been on them?
They were also the detonators that had been used to detonate the bomb. Part of them had been used to detonate the Murrah building bombing.
I see. So these were some of the leftovers.
Leftovers.
Right. I see. So that whoever was involved in constructing the bomb their prints would have been on there as well.
Yes. And that's exactly what happened. Nichols tried to get Homeland Security. He tried to leak the location of these detonators to a number of people other than the FBI. The FBI found out about them, immediately rushes in, seizes them, and destroys them.
And when was that? When did that take place?
They destroyed them. April of 2005 is when they found them, and I think they were destroyed shortly thereafter.
Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And so there again, there's direct proof that there was a phone call that the FBI, I guess, is trying to get rid of the trace of that, or get rid of the responsibility for that phone call.
Yes.
Absolutely incredible. All right. Well, I guess before we move on from Terry Nichols, was there any other information that Nichols had conveyed to you that you want to give to the listeners?
He suspected that and this I don't know if it's true or not. He suspected that McVeigh was a government operative. Now, whether he started out as such and went rogue, I don't know. I do know that McVeigh was at Waco and apparently just went ballistic at what happened there. But prior to that time, he was traveling the militia circuit all around the country, staying with the various militia movements and then moving on to another and another and another. He fit the pattern of a government operative. But whether he was or not, I don't know. But Nichols suspected that he was.
That's right. And there was a letter that McVeigh wrote to his sister in which he conveyed the idea that he was part of a special operations team.